first of all, just congratulations. I congratulate you because so many people say that they'd love to own their own business, or they roll their eyes and say, well, wouldn't that be great? But not a lot of people take the action that you're taking today to get informed. So first of all, I congratulate you for that. My name's Emily. For those of you that don't know me, I like to be really transparent. This is the lens through which I view entrepreneurship. This is my personal path. I'm a third generation entrepreneur. My dad was a lumber broker here in the Pacific Northwest. My grandpa played baseball for the Portland Beavers and ended up opening a bar. I did start my own small business. It was about 15 years ago. I ran that for about 4 years, had a great experience. Frankly, I got to the point where I needed to either scale or bail, and I didn't know how to scale. I didn't know how to take my business to the next level. And I had an opportunity to work at a Silicon Valley startup. So I did that for 6 very exciting months and then VC pulled the funding. I've had a few positions in a corporate career, and frankly, I have found my home in franchising for the last 7 years. So here's what we're going to do today. We're going to talk about why business ownership. I mean, if you're anything like me, even though I'm a third generation entrepreneur, the message I still got was to get a college degree and to get a job. So if you're like me and you were taught to do that, why are we even here considering something completely different? We're going to talk about 3 different options for getting into business ownership, and we're going to talk about the risks and rewards for each. I'm going to talk about myths and realities of franchising. I'm going to spend more time on franchising simply because I think franchising is the most overlooked and understood entrepreneurial path. We're going to talk about how to identify the best business option for you and talk about building your personal business model. Now, any of you that have any type of professional background or a corporate background, what I believe to be true is the approach at which we use to find a job, very, very, very different than the approach we use to find a business and build a business model. So we're going to talk about that at the end. Who is FranNet? We've been around for 30 years. We are a consulting firm. I'm not in sales. I'm not going to try to sell you anything. If I sound like a salesperson because I'm excited, I had a little bit more caffeine than usual today, but also I'm just really passionate about what I do. We provide a very educational approach. And so we have partnerships with SCORE, with the Small Business Development Center, and we provide them with education and information regarding franchising that they pass on to their clients. And essentially, we match people to businesses across the country. What we do is we thoroughly screen franchisors to certain standards, and we bring them thoroughly screened candidates, and we're the matchmakers. With that said, because franchise ownership doesn't make sense for everyone, we have a lot of data and a lot of experience as it relates to business ownership overall that I'm here to share with you. So whether you're thinking about starting a business from scratch or buying an existing business, you can leverage the data and the information from franchising, some of the resources that we use, and you can use those to support your entrepreneurial path. And lastly, I am committed to serving what's in your best interest. I, along with every other FranNet associate across the country, we have put in writing that we are here to serve whatever is in your best interest, even if that means saying no to business ownership. We're here to advocate for you, to ensure that you get the information. So whether you say yes or no, it is based on fact and information and not myths or misperceptions. So let's pause for a second. So imagination is something that we don't get to use very often as adults, but if you could just imagine you are the owner of a successful business. How would your life be better? What does that look like? Common things that come to mind are, more time with my family. And behind that, I would say, is perhaps autonomy, just the ability to be self-directed with how we spend our time and energy. It might be consistent or more secure income. I mean, I don't know what the answers are for you. Here's some of the more common answers. Success is very subjective. But what I invite you to consider is, what does success look like for you? And to keep your eyes on the prize. So sometimes we can get distracted by the shiny carrot of the business when really we want to look at, what does the business need to provide for me for it to make sense? Time with family, autonomy, financial return, whatever it is for you, hold on to that. And even though so many people say, oh, it must be nice to own a business, most of them decide to go work for someone else. Now, why is that? Well, here's some common reasons. Very understandable reason is risk. A lot of people feel that a job is safer than starting a business. Some people would like to wait until a shift in the economy. Money, a very understandable concern, right? Buying a business or starting a business costs money. It costs money to get it up and running. Knowledge is a factor. I don't know what I don't know. I don't know where to start. I don't know what to look for. But you know what I do know is I know what I've done. Sometimes it's human nature, perhaps, to return to what is familiar and assume that familiarity is, we mistake that for comfort. And then there's skills. If you have had done one skill set in one industry for 10 or 20 years, the idea of getting out of that and asking, do I have the right skills to run a business? That can be really daunting. So these are all really understandable, but we want to look at the reality, especially as it relates to a job. The rules have really changed. My guess is, I'm 43, so I'm guessing those of us age 40 and older, I think we're the ones that have really played by the rules, but the rules changed. And here's what I mean by that. My father-in-law worked for the same company for about 45 years. And some of us were raised that if we paid our dues and we were committed, and if we drove results, that implied a certain level of job security. And job security is a thing of the past, right? That just doesn't exist the way it used to. The rules have changed. What has changed in part is job tenure has significantly shortened. So I don't know anybody that's worked for the same company for 45 years anymore. Typically, on average, people stay with a company, and it depends on their position. C-suite executives, the average tenure is 2.67 years. A lot of managers, we're looking at 5 to 6 years. Now, if we have anybody here from Boise, I've worked with a number of people that got laid off from Micron, and I will say that there are some people in Boise that have worked for Micron for 15 and 18 years. That seems to be a little bit of an anomaly. For those of you in Portland, we tend to have higher turnover rates. Really, the focus is off job security, and really what we're focusing on is income security. Now, having a job is great, and if you're reaching your goals with a job, that's fantastic. That paycheck, those health benefits, that is very advantageous. So there's a couple of options. Some people decide to leave the job, or perhaps they left a job that was decided for them to leave, and they jump full-time all into an owner-operator business model, right, instead of the job. Another option is what we call semi-absentee ownership, and I'd say about half of my placements fall into this category. And this is an opportunity where you can keep your job options open. You can keep a salaried position, and quietly start a part-time business on the side. It's more of an investor model or a portfolio business. We call it semi-absentee because it ultimately requires only about part-time hours from the owner. This is a business that is manager run. Everything is cloud-based. So you as the owner, you might pop into a location-based business and check in on the manager, but essentially you're running it remotely and you get to keep your day job open. What that also provides is income security over the long run if you find yourself as a professional in a cycle where every 3 to 6 years you are looking for a position. So I'm going to leave that there. And let's talk about risk reduction. Whether you're looking to start a business from scratch, buy an existing business, or start a franchise, there are specific market characteristics that I invite you to consider to focus on that which is recession resistant. Now, I don't think anything is recession proof, but there are some businesses that thrive in just about any economic condition. So some examples: a growing market that is driven by demographics. Example, senior care. We've got 8,000 to 10,000 people turning 65 every day. Sidebar is a common misconception people have with senior care businesses is they think that the owner is interacting with the seniors, and that's rarely the case, frankly. Usually the owner is either managing employees, like caregivers, people that are interacting with the seniors, or another example is the owner is interacting with the adult children to help identify the level of support that their aging parent might need. Okay, back to what we're talking about is these growing markets. Residential repairs, home modification, especially with empty nesters that have an enormous amount of equity in their home. They don't want to move. They might not want to downsize, but they might want to reinvest. Cleaning services. This is especially true for B2B, even in an economic downturn. My doctor's office, right? All these offices, they need to get cleaned at night. Other examples are essential services. I don't care what's happening in the economy, my hair grows and I need to get it cut. How much I spend on a haircut might vary depending on the economy, but you get my point. Fitness, staying healthy. Automotive, I already mentioned I'm in Bend and it's snowing. I gotta get my tires, make sure my tires are solid. I gotta get my brakes fixed. I drive to Boise and Portland and up to Washington pretty regularly. Damage restoration. I'm embarrassed to tell you this, but I had 3 homeowners insurance claims in 18 months. No matter what the economy is doing when my basement floods, I'm going to pay my homeowner's deductible and my homeowner's insurance is going to pay for the cleanup. I'm getting new floors next week. I'm very excited about this. And also consider businesses that help other small businesses. For example, most small businesses don't have an in-house IT department or marketing department. So a small business that supports other small businesses can be very lucrative. Other things to consider here is professionals always need training. Parents always want quality education for their kids. Homeowners take pride in their homes. Businesses need to be maintained. Employers often outsource. So consider these factors when you're identifying your entrepreneurial path. So there's a couple of paths, there's a couple of means to business ownership. There's advantages and there's disadvantages to each. I don't think any one way is better than another. But I do feel really strongly about you having a high level of awareness and being able to identify which of these paths might make the most sense for you. So let's talk about the pros and cons of each. Starting a business from scratch, I mean, you get total control. And for some of you joining today, that may be the only way you do this, is only if you have complete and utter control. I get that. You get to make all the decisions. There's room for creativity, innovation. There's no rules. There is a huge upside. I mean, I love reading about people that start a business and then maybe they sell it to a larger business, a huge acquisition, and I'm so happy for them. There is a huge upside. And if you have a business, a passion, you can build a business from it. Now, some of the disadvantages, Not only do you get to do everything, but you have to do everything. So a common example, I speak with a lot of professionals that want to start a consulting business, and they have enormous experience and expertise that they love sharing with others. And what they find is they didn't realize how much time and energy they need to put into marketing or prospecting or operations, and how little time they actually get to do doing what they love, which is the consulting. Starting a business from scratch tends to have fewer financial options and, frankly, a slower ramp up. There's really no template. There is no, and here's what we do next. It's like, it's just a great unknown. And frankly, they tend to have a higher failure rate. If you're thinking about buying an existing business, there are definitely some advantages. First of all, immediate cash flow. And for some of us, that might be the only way we can even get into business ownership, is if immediate cash flow is there. There could be goodwill. I mean, it might be just a great opportunity if someone is selling or looking to retire. It could be a really wonderful opportunity for you to get in on. You get to look at the books and see the financial results. It's more attractive to lenders than starting a business from scratch. You get a customer base, you have employees in place, there might even be systems that you can leverage, and there might be some financing available through the current owner. Now, some disadvantages. What is the actual cash flow of the business? And what is the current owner running through the business? Business owners get really creative around April 15th. And while you can look at the books, it can be hard to determine actual cash flow. Why are they really selling? Now, my husband teases me. He thinks I'm just this Pollyanna. I generally really like people. I generally really trust people. But when I feel like somebody's trying to sell me something, even I get a little skeptical. And here's a statistic that was shared with me, is that 2 out of every small businesses that sell, and this can be a local small business, this can also be a franchise, because a franchise is a locally owned small business. 2 out of every 3 of them are sold to an employee, a family member, or a friend. That transaction took place, that opportunity was never ours. The transaction took place without our knowledge. So the one out of 3 businesses where somebody in the know didn't buy the business, those are often the ones that we see. And even I can't help but wonder, well, what does that employee, family member, or friend know that I don't know? And how can I know? I don't know. I don't know. If we don't know what the actual cash flow of the business is, being that a business is typically sold at a multiple, what is the value of the business? So it could really be overpriced. This is especially the case if you're buying a business that somebody else grew from scratch, because it's their baby. You know, they are very emotionally entwined with what they perceive as the value of the business. That emotion and that love does not necessarily translate into black and white facts and figures. If you take over, you acquire this business, will there be any training or support available to you? Will the employees stay under new ownership? Will the customers stay under new ownership? And also, there tends to be a higher debt service. So let's talk about the pros and cons to buying a franchise. Now, some of this, I'm guessing you already know, but frankly, there might be a few things listed here that are new to most people. So one obvious advantage of investing in a franchise is you've got the name recognition and trademark, but essentially what we're talking about here is a proven business system. I always laugh because the word franchise sounds so much like French fries, and it drives me crazy because usually people hear the word franchise and they think of fast food. But a franchise is not fast food. A franchise is a business system that has been replicated and executed by numerous people in numerous locations. And you get to see, well, what people, how many people, and where, and how successful were they? So there's actually a high degree of transparency to you. There is great training and support. Most people, when they're considering franchise ownership at the beginning, are understandably really focused on the amount of training that they'll get from the franchisor. And what my clients come back and tell me is, there's the training from the franchisor, but ultimately it's the support from the other franchisees that has had such an impact on my business. Franchises tend to have a lower failure rate and a lower cost, or certainly more predictable cost, which I'll get into, more financing options, and a disclosure. So the franchise industry is regulated by the Federal Trade Commission. And by law, every single franchisor is mandated to have a franchise disclosure document, which is a legal document. It is very, very thick. And I'm going to tell you exactly what kind of information you can access about any specific franchise before you write a check or, sign anything. I'm going to get into that in a minute. And I do want to kind of pause and talk about the franchise family. Gosh, that used to sound so cheesy to me initially. But in my experience in franchising, the best way I can think to describe the franchise family is this. Is a little over a year ago. So FranNet is a franchise, by the way. And a little over a year ago, one of a FranNet franchisees was diagnosed with cancer. So being that I own the same business in a different location, I know how to successfully run her business. About 100 FranNet franchisees across the country that know how to successfully run her FranNet business. And we are able to step in and have her back and support the success and growth of her business while she has a surgery or is recovering and whatnot. And this is somebody I've worked in parallel with for years. And over time, you develop these wonderful relationships. So in franchising, it's the family. It's amazing to be able to be in a position where other people have your back and where you have their back. And you work side by side and not in competition. And I've just never seen that available elsewhere. Now, there are definitely disadvantages to franchising. For starters, there's fewer industry options. So if you have a really unique business idea and you would love to find it available in a franchise business system, it just may not be available. Most have structured operating systems. So if you like to use QuickBooks and the franchisor and every other franchisee uses a different system, you'll likely need to adapt to their system. There are territory restrictions. This is good news, bad news. So most, but not all, but most franchises have territory restrictions. And what this means is that a franchisor has determined that a certain geographical radius or perhaps a population density is needed to support that one business location. And when they award that territory, they're not going to put another franchisee there. Now, the bad news is if the territory that you would like to acquire is not available. So you might need to choose between one, acquiring the franchise in a territory that may not be as close to home. It might involve a commute or whatnot. It might also mean just not moving forward with that particular franchise brand and finding something that is available where you want it to be. Also, you can only sell their products. So if your sister-in-law loves to knit hats and would like you to sell them for her, that may not be an option. And also there are ongoing royalty payments. So essentially, a franchise, it's a trade-off. You get a license to use and access the winning playbook in exchange for a one-time royalty fee, a one-time franchise fee and ongoing royalties. You get to be part of a distribution channel, and you get to be the one to bring that to your market and attain market dominance quickly. Now, I'm going to get into that franchise disclosure document that I told you about. Here's some of the information that you can access. You can get information on the franchisor. What is their business experience? Who are these people? Have they ever been sued? Have they ever declared bankruptcy? I would want to know this before becoming a part of that franchise system. What are the actual costs to get into this? So item 7 in the FDD is usually breaks down the total investment as it relates to the franchise fee, working capital. Do you need to acquire any equipment Or is there any insurance, special insurance that you need to get? So this is all black and white ahead of time. In addition to what are the expected royalties? Royalties are usually a percentage or perhaps a flat fee. And if royalties leave a bad taste in your mouth, it's the case with some people, you know, I don't know if franchise ownership would make sense for you. I am going to give you a little bit of information on royalties here in a few minutes that might shed some light on things. Franchise contract is going to be there in black and white. Obligations. The franchisor is accountable to provide some things to you. What exactly is that, and what are you accountable to provide back to them? Your territory is going to be in black and white. The names of everyone who ever is or has been a franchisee in that brand. Earnings claims. So not all, but many FDDs do have an earnings claim. This is an item 19. And by law, a franchise representative is very limited with what information they can share with you. I mean, obviously, if we're thinking about buying a franchise, we want to know, well, how much money can I make? By law, they can't say. There's a lot of information that they can share. So what they will likely do is, one, direct you to the earnings claim in the FDD, which will show something like the margins for franchisees last year. It might show what the top quartile and bottom quartile made. So that is information that you can access. Yes, we can get more detailed information. I'll tell you in a second how we get that. Financial statements. We want to know the financial security and backing of the parent company, and policies. If you would like to renew your franchise agreement, most are about 10 years long, some are 5 or 7. Is there a fee if you want to renew? If you'd like to transfer your franchise agreement or sell, are you going to incur any fees? This is all in black and white ahead of time. So really focusing on the listing for the current and past franchisees. If you work with a FranNet consultant, we'll coach you through this. Either way, most franchisors will encourage you to get in contact with franchisees. Because the franchise representative is limited to what they can share with you, they're going to encourage you to contact some franchisees and maybe get some actual financial results from them. Also, the franchise representative, they're going to tell you, oh, we'll give you all this training and we have this great conference once a year and we're this great franchise family and you're going to be so successful. They're going to have their best face forward. What we want to do is validate what they're saying with people in the know. So if you're researching a franchise and you can ask other franchisees who own and operate that business, what kinds of things would you ask them? I might ask them, hey, did the training that the franchisor provide you, did you really feel empowered and equipped when you started your business? When did you break even? Any lessons learned as it relates to employees? Did you have a high turnover? Anything. You can ask them these questions. Past franchisees, you can ask them, well, how did you exit? Did you sell your franchise to a neighboring franchisee? It's kind of the most common way to exit. What kind of multiple did you get for your business? Did it sit on the market long? So these are all opportunities to leverage the knowledge and experience of other people to decrease your risk and ultimately increase your predictability. And having this level of transparency and candor is, in my experience, it's just not available in any of the other entrepreneurial paths. So let's talk about some of these myths here. I tell you, oftentimes we think French fries, but franchising is not all fast food and retail. There's over 3,600 different companies, and I've got a chart here that shows just a few of the industries, of which there's over 90. Another common myth is that franchises succeed because of the quality of the product. Really? I'm guessing that anyone on this call, even if you're vegan, which you probably wouldn't want to make a burger, but you could probably make a burger better than McDonald's. So if it's not the quality, what is it? It's the system. It's the marketing, sales, operations, and accounting system that is available to you as a franchisee. Another common myth is that the successful franchises emerge where there's no new competitors, and that's absolutely not true. If anything, some franchises won't go where there's no competition. Competition is good. It shows us that there is a demand. And what franchising does with the system is it creates consolidation where there is demand. McDonald's wasn't the only burger restaurant around when it came on board, but it was the one that had the best system. Now the focus is off fast food and we're really focusing on consumer services, business services. Another common myth is that franchises are expensive, and the word expensive is very subjective, so I'm going to give you some numbers here. Now, one just takeaway from this is that about 2/3 of franchises have a total investment of $250,000 and under. That does not mean you have $250,000 available to you in your bank account. That's total investment. What most franchisors are looking for is someone who can access about 25% of the total investment with cash injection. Most of my clients finance the rest with, for example, an SBA loan. Now, where can you access this liquidity? You might have it in a personal savings account. You might have a friend or a family member want to get involved. Multi-generational ownership in franchises is very common right now, where an older generation that has more financial stability might invest in, for example, a semi-absentee business for their adult children to run. It's a great opportunity to build a legacy and to create an asset, maybe something to pass down. A HELOC is an option. If it's a resale that you're pursuing, there are oftentimes the seller will provide some financing. And what surprises a lot of people, and frankly, most financial planners have never, I don't know, they've never heard of this, and it's been going on since the 70s. Half, if not more than half of my clients actually use this for liquidities, where you can access a portion of your retirement toward the acquisition of a business without paying any penalties or taxes. Now, I know so many of us have been told, don't touch your retirement. It may or may not make sense for you. If most of your net worth is tied up in your retirement, this can be an opportunity to diversify. We're not talking about gutting your retirement. We're talking about taking just a portion, like, for example, just paying the franchise fee with it. I can give you the names of some financing specialists that do this. Also, every month, FranNet hosts a webinar, How to Finance a Franchise or Business, where we get into that. You can wait for the next one, or if you'd like to listen to the recording, just shoot me an email. I'll give you my contact information. I'll email you a link so you can access that information. Another myth is that high return is required to get a high investment. That's absolutely not true. There is no correlation between money in and money out. If anything, some of those higher investment businesses, so much of the investment is just going to overhead, whereas the lower cost businesses and the service-based businesses have lower overhead, and frankly, they've got higher margins. Also, a huge myth is that industry experience is required. And this absolutely makes sense to me, especially if for those of us that have a corporate background, or we've only known one industry, and if we're considering getting into business ownership for our first time, it makes sense that we would just focus on industries where we have firsthand experience. But when it comes to franchising, actually, franchisors want the opposite. A franchisor is looking for someone who is willing to learn their system, someone with great business skills, leadership skills, communication skills. Do you have the ability to lead and build a team? Do you have the ability to drive results? Are you a great communicator? These are things that they're looking for. They're looking for someone that they can train to use their system. Frankly, in franchising, having industry experience can actually work against us. For one, we might be bringing processes and procedures from our experience into a franchise business system that just don't fit the system. We might get in our own way. But number two, is when we have that industry experience and we carry that over into business ownership, when it comes to a franchise, we might be thinking and acting like an employee instead of thinking and acting like a business owner. So why might you want to own a franchise? I mean, guys, I gotta tell you, I've been doing this a few years and I've never once heard somebody say, I just woke up this morning, I want to own a franchise. It doesn't happen. But owning a franchise can be a great fit when we look at it as a vehicle to reaching our larger goals. And if our larger goals involve the autonomy and control of business ownership, where we can decrease the risk, increase the predictability, this can be a great platform. Also, well, I already talked about it, it's a way to reduce risk and have some income security. Whatever your goals are for you, if you are someone that ultimately wants more flexibility in your time and energy, or maybe you're looking at, maybe you've got high school age kids and you're thinking, hey, in 5 years, I'm going to be an empty nester and this is how I want to spend my time and energy. Well, researching a franchise, you can talk to people that have owned their franchise for 5 years and ask them, what kinds of work-life balance do you have? What kind of flexibility do you have? And you get to leverage their experience. Now, why pay royalties? Some people have no problem paying royalties. Other people, it just doesn't make sense. But one thing I invite you to consider is this. A good franchisor, they're going to screen you in your research process just as much as you're screening them. And a good franchisor is actually going to lose money on you in the short term. Look at it this way. In the beginning, the franchisor's support costs for a new franchisee are very high. They're going to be training you, perhaps training your employee. They're going to be getting you set up operationally. If it's a location-based business, they might have their real estate team working on site selection, lease negotiation, and build out for you. And they're doing all of this while your royalties are very low. Now, they're gambling, they're betting on you that they are going to make money, and frankly, that you're going to make that money back in the long term. Because in the long term, their support costs are going to go down, whereas your royalties are going to go up. So royalties are a trade-off. You exchange some profits in the long term for a risk reduction in the short term. You get to leverage the experience, the expertise, the systems of people that have already done this, and you get to be part of a culture. One of my favorite things is, I had a client who was researching a couple of different franchises, and she was at the stage where she was validating with franchisees. And there was one particular franchise that whenever she'd speak with a franchisee, she just clicked. She just clicked with them. And she called me and she said, Emily, I found my tribe. So it's really wonderful when you find that franchise family or that culture of like-minded professionals. And please know, franchises are not all the same. This is not something that can be learned and decided on a Google search. There are some franchises that in order to meet your financial goals, it might require that you own multiple units, whereas other franchises, you might be able to meet your financial goals with just one location. There are some well-established brands that have been around for decades, and there are some really young brands. How that often correlates is sometimes those seasoned brands have really structured systems, whereas the younger brands have more flexible systems. Now, and then there's everything in between, but what makes sense for you? Where like a lot of engineers might find those more seasoned, highly structured brands. An engineer who's used to working in a structured environment might find that as feeling very supportive. Whereas a sales professional might find that as being, they might feel handcuffed, right? A more innovative structure might feel very freeing for some people, whereas other people, it might feel reckless. It's not that one is better than another. It's about really having that level of self-awareness for you and knowing what makes sense for you. And then, of course, we've got expensive versus inexpensive franchise models. I also caution you to really be aware of the statistics. Percentages can get skewed with some of those big franchise brands. Also, a lot of what is now a franchise brand was actually started by someone who founded a business and had many, many locations. And so we want to look at the units, the success of the units that were run by franchisees, because not all units were run by the founder. Really only care about your success. In every franchise, there's going to be people that are very successful, and there's going to be people that are struggling. I invite you to speak with both in your research and find out, who you identify with, the people that are really successful in reaching their goals or not. Now make sure that the franchise you're interested in is a great fit for you. If entrepreneur.com says it's one of the latest and greatest, it doesn't mean it makes the most sense for you. Actually, another statistic that I caution you is some of those top 50 franchise brands of 2019, really look and see what information they're using to make that claim. A common measurement they use is the number of franchises awarded. So for example, if franchise ABC awarded 200 new franchise locations in 2019, does that really mean it's one of the best franchises? Because what it means to me is that if you acquire that franchise, you got 200 people in line in front of you trying to get up and running that need support from the franchisor. Is the franchisor sufficiently equipped to get that many new franchisees up and running? Okay, so just be aware of the statistics and beware of Google. So with franchising, you're in business for yourself, absolutely, but you're never by yourself. And I want to talk about finding the perfect fit. Whether you are thinking about starting a business from scratch, acquiring a business, or starting a franchise, I think this is something that we can all really benefit from. So first, separate the function of the business from the function of the business owner. So I know you know this, that it's not, business ownership is not, I love sandwiches, so I'm going to buy a deli. I actually had someone a couple of years ago said that she wanted to buy a Jimmy John's because she thinks she would just love like making sandwiches. Separate the role of the owner from the role of the business. You might find, excuse me, you might do a Google search and you might come across a business that you just love the product or the service they're providing, and it's something that you can really get behind. And that's fantastic. But that doesn't give us any clue into what you as an owner would be doing on a daily basis. So we really need to keep that separate and keep an open mind. What is most important to you? Now you know what's important to you, but how does that relate? How does that translate into business? So some of us are really driven by the challenge. Some of us are driven by the opportunity to build an empire or more time with family. Ultimately, what is it for you? And this is where I think the job search, and I talk about job search simply because a lot of people enter business ownership when they're in career transition. So I don't know if that's the case for you, but a lot of people, when we're looking for a job, we look at the job description and we create our resume and we match our resume, which is largely based on skill set and experience, and we match our resume to the job description. The resume doesn't reflect us as a whole, right? It's only just a sliver of who we are and as it pertains to what they want of us. Now, here's where business ownership is completely different. Is before we even go look at the businesses, what I encourage you to do is to look at ourselves. Who am I? What is important to me? What drives me? What motivates me? What inspires me to take action and to perform? And a phenomenal resource that is available to you is, we call it it's called a franchise readiness assessment, but it's not just specific to franchising. This is a phenomenal resource to any entrepreneur. And this is absolutely complimentary. I'll show you a link here in just a minute as we're wrapping up. What I love about this is it's a behavioral assessment. It's kind of a personality test. And yes, it's going to shed light on core competencies, but the feature of this that makes it so unique is it really focuses on our values. So I know for me, just because, well, let me put it this way. When my actions, whether in my personal life or my professional life, when they align with my values, I tend to be more internally motivated and driven and fulfilled. When it comes to skill set, I mean, just because I'm good at something, it doesn't mean I feel called to do it. But our values is what calls us to take action. And if we want to be able to predict how we or someone is going to perform, we look at their values and then we expect them to act accordingly, right? So what this assessment does is it will shed light on your driving values, and then we can translate that into business ownership. So as in specific to franchising, so as the beginning of our conversation, I mentioned that FranNet thoroughly pre-screens boutique franchises. We actually decline 5 out of every 6 franchises that approach us to support their development. So that 1 out of 6 that we actually approve, once approved, we give their top performing franchisees this same assessment. So I actually have a profile for all of the franchises in my inventory. I have a profile for someone to be, you know, the ideal candidate for this franchise is someone who values A, B, and C. And so when individuals take this profile, I'm able to look at your results and immediately start identifying which specific franchises have top performing individuals that share your values and that are like-minded professionals like yourself. So we'll start matching you to businesses. That is an enormous starting point, but we need to do more than that. And this is again where we're taking a look at you specifically. So we might get a list of 20 different franchises where you profile as an ideal candidate, but which of these is going to make the most sense for you? So we're going to really take a good look at you. As a business owner, what hat do you want to wear most often? And this is a business model. You can build a business model whether you're starting a business from scratch, buying an existing business, or starting a franchise. What kind of investment makes sense for you? What kind of return is needed? What kind of people do you want to be interacting with? Whether that is how you manage or lead employees to customer acquisition. So we build this mind map, if you will, and it's a template where we say, hey, in a perfect world, this is the ideal business for you. If you're exploring franchising and working with a FranNet associate, what we'll do is we'll look at which franchises have been pre-approved and most closely fit your model. We'll introduce you to those franchises and we will coach and advocate you through a process of due diligence so that you can make a well-informed yes or no decision. If you want to take the FRA, you will get your results in an 11-page report and some things to ask yourself in your research process. As you learn about the franchise system, is it something that you see yourself following? Does it feel too structured? Does it feel too flexible? Right? Is it affordable to you? Is the risk level acceptable to you and to your spouse? And is this something that you think you'll enjoy? And my hope for you is after speaking with other owners, you'll be able to walk away and either say, yeah, I don't see myself doing this, or perhaps the complete opposite. The good news is that you can get an enormous amount of information without spending any money in your research. It will cost time. It'll cost your time and energy, but it's not going to cost you any money, not till the end. As you do your research, you can start to identify which of your transferable skills are most applicable to this business. With your business model, you could start to see, hey, what makes sense for me 5 years from now? Talk to people that have owned that business for 5 years, 10 years out, 20 years out. Start with the end in mind. Here's some fantastic resources. I'm going to pause here just for a second in case you want to write down any of these titles. I find the E-Myth Revisited a fantastic resource for any entrepreneurial path. And I personally give a copy of Street Smart Franchising to every individual that I consult. So if you'd like to take next steps, I really encourage you to take that free assessment. It tends to be a really fun and eye-opening experience. You will get your results in an 11-page report. This is a secure link. No one will see it but me. I'll get copied on your results. Also, if you'd just like to have a conversation, if you have any questions, here's my direct contact information. You could shoot me an email or just give me a call. I love hearing from people. I love supporting your entrepreneurial path. I am going to unmute. Sorry, you're going to hear my eyes darting around here as I am changing screens to unmute you guys. We wrapped up about 7 minutes early, so as I unmute you, I will check the questions box, but also feel free to shout anything out. Any questions? Looks like somebody lost audio, but I think you got it back. Questions, concerns, anything that I can do to help while you guys are still here with me. All right, well, I hear some typing. Hopefully you're typing in that assessment link. Again, feel free to contact me with and thank you for your time and attention today. And I wish you the very best on your entrepreneurial path. Take care, everybody. Bye.